Okay, it is 6:30, so the board will now convene into a regular session. We did begin the meeting with a committee of the whole at 5:15, so now we will move into consent calendar, and I will read the following donations. We have $8,000 from the Oregon Rotary Foundation for Oregon Rotary Scholarships, $75 for embroidery for shirts from the Oregon Coral Boosters, $677.07 from Culvers of Oregon for 10% of OHS Boys Basketball Share Night, $500 for the splash pad from Jennifer Jacobson, $200 for the Prairie View Elementary 3rd grade activity account from the Lehman family, $500 for a student support fund donation from Amy Verheyden, and then approximately 800 vouchers with a redemption value of $10 each from the outlets at the Dells. They are extending goodwill to our educators and wanted to reach beyond the Sauk County area, so they delivered those 800 vouchers for all OSD staff members. So thank you to them and to all of the entities and individuals for their donations to the Oregon School District. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second? Katie, could you please call the roll because Mary is on the phone.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes, but I think I need to abstain from minutes.
There were no minutes this time.
Oh, there weren't?
Nope.
Oh, never mind then. I just remember I wasn't here in December.
Yep, we don't have those minutes done yet.
Okay,
Dr. Lakuta?
never mind.
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Moving on to C, information items. Do we have anyone registered here? For...
I'm here, and I'm a yes also.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
It's okay. Late, not
She made an assumptive vote for you. Okay, moving on to information items. Is anyone registered for public comment? Is anyone here for public comment? One more time, is there anyone here for public comment? Okay, moving on to OEA report. Is there anyone here from the OEA for comment? Okay, thank you. They're here, but no comment. Then moving on to student report, and we have Peyton and Wyatt here. Welcome. The floor is yours.
So as the semester's wrapping up and we're nearing finals, we will have the final schedule. I know we didn't in the last few years, but we will be doing a longer class period over 3 days this semester. Our theater department is preparing for Tech Week next week, and then a performance after that of Big Fish. Our sports teams are doing quite well with our basketball team, our wrestling team, and our hockey team all doing really well in their respective conferences. Wrestling actually just hosted a youth tournament here this last weekend that I was unable to be at, but I did hear that it was very well done and that everyone was very happy with how it went. We have also recently had one of our teachers featured in the news, Mr. Lease from our tech ed department, and that was very exciting for everyone to hear. And then I'll hand it over to Wyatt.
Okay. We've also been part of the Superintendent Advisory Council, which is why we got to be here. Our club has been discussing some of the topics that our student representatives in the club were interested in. The first topic we had been focusing on at one of our meetings was mental health resources and what that looks like in the district. So we would been getting to talk to some of the people in our district that were in charge of either supporting students or helping organize between the different school districts and learning how that is. And I think our next topic we're looking to move into is what the district testing scores look like and what that means with respect to that.
All right, thank you both. We appreciate you being here. Okay, moving on to D, action items. We have 2 action items tonight, WASB resolutions and then the employee handbook. First, WASB resolutions, and so what that is referencing is we'll be going to the school board convention in a couple weeks, and they're all resolutions are put up for review by all state school boards, or all school district school boards, and so Leslie Wright is our representative for that. So I'm going to turn it over to her. So she's going to kind of go through things that she would like to discuss tonight, and then we'll open the floor for other discussions and questions. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Leslie.
Thank you, Krista. So in looking at them, I think it bears noting that the WASB did a really nice job this year of going through and redefining what needed to be on these resolutions. I don't know if any of you recall last year, there were a lot of resolutions that were very thought-provoking and caused a very long, extended moment at the convention, and so not everything was gone through. So this year they actually went through and narrowed it down. most of what they did was redefining the wording on a lot of their resolutions. But there are two that I want to kind of discuss. The first one I want to discuss, I'm going to ask for Gina's help, and I don't know, maybe even John's help. It's up to you how you want to do that. But it is based off of a resolution proposed by Milwaukee, I believe, and it has to do with English language, second English language learners, and how they're tested. And I asked Gina for her assistance with that because it has to do with existing case law and some ramifications that might happen. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. And I really appreciate you sending that to me and being able to look at that ahead of time, because I also had a really good discussion with the attorneys at the Wisconsin Association of School Boards just to make sure that we were all looking at the case the same way. And so in terms of one of the questions raised is, are there legal concerns from a federal law level? And that stems from an older U.S. Supreme Court case that talked about in California that there were a number of students coming from China that did not speak English, and there was a lawsuit filed that they didn't have access to an education because they didn't understand any of the instruction. And the court said yes, that that once you have a certain threshold, that you do have to give instruction in a person's heritage language in order for them to access the education. With the idea that you're moving towards fluency in English, and so my read of it is that there certainly is an argument that can be made that the state law did not take into account our legal obligations under that case and federal law as well. And so while I don't think it's directly on point, I think it does raise concerns for school attorneys as to how to do this in light of our legal obligations under federal law. So to give you my legal answer, it's a gray area, but certainly a very valid argument to be raised for us to consider. And so I did ask for Dr. Bergstrom and Mr. Tanner's opinion, because from my lens, it isn't only a legal question, but also has policy implications for our students. And then go ahead.
Yeah, so fortunately, this isn't a legal opinion, obviously. It's also not so gray. We like the Milwaukee resolution, public schools resolution, because it adds a lot more context and nuance, and I think fairness for the reasons that Dr. Jonan talked about. The one thing that we would recommend, though, is that in the resolution it talks about providing the testing for students in their first language, and that could be extremely logistically difficult. And so what we would advocate for as a possible addendum or amendment to that would be to say that that would be required only once students hit, the number of students hits a specific threshold, which is very similar to how we provide bilingual services currently. If we have one student who speaks a language only other than English, they are provided with English as a second language services, so ESL services, and that term is being changed a lot now, but we'll stick with ESL because that's what the law says right now. But for bilingual services, once there's a certain number of students who speak the same language, then we provide them with bilingual services. And that has to do with just the feasibility of hiring a person who speaks that language and is a licensed educator. So we think that using a similar model when reaching a point where we need to provide testing for those students would be a balance between meeting the needs of students and having some logistical sustainability for the school district.
All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll take questions on that, and then I guess I have a parliamentary question for you, Gina. As we get through all these, if the board so chooses to have Leslie bring forward this amendment, do we have to do these separately, or can we do one to approve the WSB recommended resolutions with these additions?
Yes, that would be fine to have one motion.
Okay, so let's take this one in terms of, so I'll turn it over to you first, Leslie, for your thoughts on John's amendment, and then we'll open the floor for anybody else for discussion.
So I think the amendment, that's why I actually sought out Gina, and I appreciate the fact that John jumped in and gave us this amendment, because I really did feel like it was concern, and it is, to me, I would support, being able to have our students learn or take tests in their own language, or in their first language, I guess I should say. However, there is a cost to that, and we need to figure out like the balance of that. And I feel like as a school district, we do a fairly good job of that, but we need to like look at this as the all of Wisconsin that we're talking about for WASB. So I would propose that yes, we would accept his amendment.
It's a state decision. In this amendment, I didn't specify a threshold specifically. I just said we would recommend that there be one, that would have it be, so someone should decide that there should be a threshold, and I kind of said similar to the bilingual one, not necessarily similar in numbers, because it could probably be lower, because simply screening or doing an assessment for somebody is probably less work than actually providing staffing for continuous instruction in the first language. But I still think there should be a threshold. But I didn't specify a certain number because I didn't do the research to figure out what that might be.
Okay. And when WASB gets these, this is kind of setting work that they will undergo and take on in the coming years. I mean, this isn't like the end all. This is sort of the direction that WASB focuses on with their efforts throughout the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, if this becomes one of their sorry, I can't think of the word. Thank you. One of their resolutions that they have consistently, then what they will do is they will support that by going for legislation towards that. WASB doesn't actually have the legislation itself in there. This would be WASB's rules, not necessarily the state of Wisconsin rules. So it would still take legislative action for it to become state. But when it's recommended in here, that's best practice, what they propose, yes.
Any other questions or discussions? Go ahead, Troy.
Leslie, did you say there were two that you wanted to discuss? Okay, so you have another one coming. Okay,
I do,
sorry.
yes.
Mary, anything from you on this one?
Oh, I do just have one clarification, and I'm not sure who it's for, but the bullet point that says that recent arrivals to the country be waived from any English assessment for 1 year, blah, blah, blah. Now, there are many English-speaking non-U.S. National individuals. So does that need to be clarified, or is it clear that these are non-English speakers?
The fact that you had to ask means it's probably not entirely clear. I think that was an oversight because I was speaking of it within the context of bilingual students, but it could be clarified if you think that's helpful.
I think what we are, if we approve this, I think what we are, as what we've done in previous years, is we are authorizing Leslie as our delegate to suggest that addition or amendment to this resolution when she goes to the delegation. Is that accurate? Okay. So, and go ahead.
Do you have a second one to do?
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to do it as a one motion for everything. Okay, so go ahead, Leslie.
All right, so the second one, if you have your packets at all, is under Resolution 2410, which is revenue limits, but it is under, I'm sorry, I said the wrong resolution. Resolution 2411, and it's under 4.60, general policy. So the original general policy, they're rewording here, and there are two concerns that I had, and one is that they dropped when I don't know, should I read it? I'll just read it outside. Their initial general policy said the WASB supports teacher licensure initiatives that foster a highly educated, highly trained, effective, adequately compensated professional teaching force to meet the needs of our members. That was the original. What they're proposing is the WASB supports a teacher licensure system that fosters a highly educated, highly trained, effective professional teaching force with reasonable flexibility to meet the needs of our members with regard to staffing and supply challenges. So two concerns I had with this was, one, they dropped the words adequately compensated, and I know that this is kind of a sticking point with me because I really feel like we need to put that out there because our teachers often are not adequately compensated. I think we've done a really good job in this district trying to get to that point, but I don't know that that's true of the whole state, and since this is a state thing, then we'd be concerned with that. And then one that, with talking with Krista, another one that was concerned with talking about professional teaching force with reasonable flexibility to meet the needs of our members, that might bring up some concerns about them being, going forward with things. So with that, I don't, Krista, maybe you should explain the reasonable flexibility.
Oh, what we were just discussing was, Leslie's concerned about leaving out compensation, and then I guess I know that they've kind of, it's this balance between broad and not being too ambiguous, but reasonable is kind of an interesting word. But again, I also believe in local control of school districts by individual school boards. So they have the right to determine what's reasonable for their district like we do for ours. So that was just my thought. But go ahead, Anna.
So is the reason that they're adding this language to account for the fact that finding licensed teachers has been challenging and that they are recruiting or, I guess, hiring people with different licensure pathways or non-licensure because of a challenge? So I guess to that point, if I'm in a district that is really struggling, what are my options? Is it getting somebody in the classroom who can physically be present and manage a classroom of children, maybe not licensed, but that's certainly not ideal? I would say that probably is something that no district wants to be in that position, but maybe they end up having to be. And so I don't know whether or not that we in the Oregon School Board would want to have that type of approach, but at the same time, if you are in a situation that you can't avoid it, I don't know what other options districts may have. So
yeah, I think the question is that they left out the language adequate compensation, and so I think that's what Leslie's question is do people feel comfortable that she should raise that should be left in? I think that's I think we're you're in support of that. I'm in support of that in terms of giving districts flexibility. There are some questions, but again, other districts are in more difficult spots than we are, but I think it's she's bringing up the wording adequate compensation. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Discussion or
Yes. No, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I was just gonna,
Put your microphone on.
I was just gonna make a motion, but we're not there yet. But I will.
The motion would come from Leslie,
Oh.
so it's just discussion.
Got it. I'm good.
Okay, so basically, to your point, their rationale here is their changes meant to remove outdated language, update terminology, and consolidate resolution language into a more concise and coherent policy. This is deleting, rewriting existing resolutions in accordance with the original intent, nothing new added, is what their intent is. A lot of the things, and most of their stuff was really just rewording to new updated terminology. I was just more concerned with the adequate compensation being dropped because I feel like that should remain there for teachers to have that put in there for them.
Okay, so any further discussion? Mary, do you have anything on that point?
No, I agree that Leslie should raise the question of adequate compensation to the ADTech.
Okay, so those were the two that Leslie wanted to discuss. Are there any others that board members would like to discuss in this forum right now? Mary, any?
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, hearing none, then Leslie, I'll turn it over to you to make a motion.
So I would make the motion that the board approve the resolutions with the two modifications of on the 24-11-460, retaining the wording of adequate compensation in the general policy section, and also on the resolution for the Milwaukee School Board resolution for the English language that we request some changes being made based on how many students we have at that threshold. Thank you.
Okay, is that clear enough motion? Or do we need to clarify that the second part would give Leslie authority to discuss the bilingual capacity, however you want to word that? What would be a good wording for that, Gina?
So I'm wondering if we say that the Oregon School Board supports the resolutions in front of us with the revisions as detailed by Mr. Tanner, right? And the adequate compensation in 4.60.
Motion what Gina just said.
Okay, does that work? All right. Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mary, any further discussion from you?
Thank you, but no.
Okay, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you for taking on that role, Leslie. That is an interesting one and an involved one. I know Anna did it for a number of years. I think Troy did it. Did you?
No.
Heather and Caleb, maybe you, that's in your future, so thank you for doing that. And I do agree, WSB did a nice job this year in terms of consolidation and really reviewing those ahead of time so that we have a cohesive and productive delegation. Okay, moving on to action item 2, which is employee handbook. Dr. Bergstrom, did you want to start, or did you want to?
I think we can take
Okay.
it right to Ms.
Okay, Gina, the floor is yours.
So this seems an appropriate month to ask the board to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a holiday in the 2024-25 employee handbook. So not for next week, but for next school year. For full year employees, administrative assistants, food service staff, and paraprofessional. And I will say up front that the intent of this is to be budget neutral, so not to add holidays. And so we would like some time to look at that, and we would come back to the board with a recommendation of how to have this be budget neutral. And so you can see in the purple the holidays that we have in the handbook right now. And the reason that we think it is important and appropriate is that, as you know, over time, we have surveyed our community and our staff about our calendar, as well as talked with our staff to see how we can honor our board values of educational equity and also our commitment to increasing the diversity of our staff. And we have received significant feedback over time that this is a day that we should recognize as a school district as a holiday. As you know, it is recognized on the federal level as well as the state level. And it's not only to honor a civil rights leader who dedicated his life to achieving equality for all people, but also to honor his message of equality for all and peace and nonviolence, which I feel is important every day in the world that we live in. So we are asking the board to make that change and to give us the opportunity to come back at a future time to discuss holidays. It would not impact the 24-25 calendar because that is already scheduled as a non-school day for both students and school year staff.
Okay, any clarifying questions, or I will entertain a motion on the floor so we can discuss.
Just, I guess, one question, Gina, if you could remind me why we're doing this now rather than waiting to understand the budget neutral aspect? Is it just to get the handbook completed?
We felt it was important to bring it forward this month in recognition so that staff in our community know that it is our intent for next year, because I know that we will have questions next week as to why it's not a holiday.
Go ahead, Anna.
Just a clarifying question and something that I have to remind myself every time of why there's a budget impact for giving people a day off. And I guess in a school district, it works different than, say, in my job, where if people want an extra day off, if we get an extra holiday, it just means nobody comes to work that day. But in a school district, right, we've got the food service and the paraprofessionals, which need to then probably come another day to make up the instructional minutes that are lost by having another holiday built into the school year. So I guess I just wanted to clarify that that's really the component that creates the financial impact of adding a holiday. Is that correct?
It is in terms of, yes, for the hourly staff that are not working the full year. So if you look at a day that they might if we don't have school and it's not a holiday, then they're not paid unless it's a professional development day. So if you have it be a holiday, then it is a day that they are paid and not working, so that has a budgetary impact. And I'm glad you asked that too, because Dr. Lakuta asked an excellent question this afternoon as to how are these holidays determined and how did this work with the different categories. And this predates me, but before Act 10, these groups had a union and each of them had their own collective bargaining agreement. And so these were the holidays that they had bargained. And then many districts took, well, I shouldn't say that, many Dane County districts took the collective bargaining agreements and then rolled them over into an employee handbook. So these have been the holidays that were previously bargained between those employee unions and the district, which then rolled into the handbook. So if you want to know why they're different and how they came to be, that's my history lesson for today.
Great, thank you.
All right, any further clarifying questions, or we can put a motion on the table?
I'll move to approve the B2 2024-2025 Employee Handbook Holidays as shown in the purple.
All right, is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison? Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Gina, and we look forward to a future discussion. Okay, moving on to E, discussion items, committee reports. As has been the plan this last couple months, the board is not having policy committee or visioning committee. Currently, we are meeting as committee of the whole, and so the topic before this board meeting was bus transportation. We have a very robust and family-friendly bus system, and so we are just reviewing all sorts of issues and things that will be coming in the future associated with that system. So we will report out those when they come to the board for decision-making as we move further along into staffing and the budget for the next year. So that is committee reports, discussion items. Moving on to F, information items. It is Dr. Bergstrom's part of the meeting.
Thank you. For visioning and strategic planning, I think one of the most important updates that we can possibly share with you is that we are really doing some intentional work related to OSD goal number 3, retaining and recruiting high quality, collaborative, and diverse staff, because we had our first meeting of the Professional Sustainability Task Force last week on Wednesday, with another meeting this week. You can see the timeline for our meetings is here in front of you. We are very lucky to have the meetings led by Gina Jonin and Anna Bijak, and we started the one last week, our very first meeting, with a very interested, invested, and honestly very well-informed group of people who came together because they're very passionate about this topic. Committee members, staff members, community members, yeah, I guess members works, and staff members to talk about why it's important to recruit and retain the amazing professionals we have, and how we're going to work together in service of the board's charge. And really, at the end of the meeting, we were talking about some of the retention and recruitment strategies that community members with other employers have or experience within their professions. And so then this week, we'll be looking at some existing data, because we really want all of the members to understand what we have already done in relation to retention and recruitment, and where we think the data tells us we still have room to improve. And beginning the idea of discussing potential strategies the next time we meet. So we're really excited. We have some great people, really wonderful people who applied for it, and it was an embarrassment of riches because we had so many community members we would have loved to work with, staff members we would have loved to work with, that really at the end of the day we just tried to get as many diverse voices in the room related to experiences as we possibly could in order to strengthen the results that we think we're going to be able to get from this fine group. For our teaching and learning update, I will not be sharing a lot tonight because we have a work session post the board meeting as a follow-up to our student achievement reports. So with that, I think I'm just going to move into the superintendent's report. And that is, look at that sweet little face. This is kindergarten enrollment time. Students who are age 5 on or before September 1st, now is the time. And it's done online. So students currently enrolled in our 4K program all received a form to indicate their continued enrollment and do not need to complete the enrollment process for the district again. Those who are not currently enrolled in an OSD 4K and are planning on attending kindergarten this fall must enroll. And it's OregonSD.org/kindergarten. And that's where you have all the info you'll need for the process. Now, our students are having an awful lot of fun while they're learning. We have some great examples of the creative and engaging ways that our students are experiencing their learning. Right here, second graders at Prairie View had a snow celebration. Okay, so there wasn't a lot on the ground at that time. I think that's changing soon. But they carried on and they really had a blast. They used their knowledge of symmetry to create snowflakes made out of environmentally friendly, biodegradable packing peanuts that stick together with a touch of water. I had no idea that worked like that. They also designed magnificent snowflakes using Q-tips and glue. So during the relay race, one of the team champs was wrapped from head to toe in, I bet you can guess, toilet paper. That always seems to be what we wrap ourselves in. So FES had another fun day. They had what they have begun to call their switcheroo. So this is Forest Edge. This is the first one of the year right before winter break. And during this time, the students could choose a class to follow their interests. Sessions included things like tea parties, giant banner coloring, parachute play, crafts, jewelry making, 3D pens, Mario Kart, karaoke, basketball, and origami. Those were just some examples of the FES Switcheroo Day. This is becoming an annual event. Actually, it might be more than annual. And Netherwood had some really fun stuff happening too. These are the 4th graders at Netherwood, and they've been working on finger weaving. This is an extension of the weaving project they engaged in to learn about Indigenous Heritage Month in November. Students have really embraced these projects so much that they have requested to learn more and will continue by using the medium of yarn and abstract foil embossing. Wow. Thanks to Mrs. Prawl for this project and this great learning opportunity. And then, of course, our Brooklyn kids. They are engineering and designing. This is Mrs. Valentine's 2nd grade class at Brooklyn, spending time learning about engineering and design. They used what they learned to build and create some amazing towers. And actually today, they all took a survey related to their prediction regarding tomorrow's inclement weather day. They did it in the morning and they sent it to me, showing that they also knew how to create graphs. It was pretty great. So thank you, Miss Valentine's class. And a good portion of you were correct. It is a snow day tomorrow. And this is a really, really great experience for our Prairie View students where they were learning about how to be an upstander. So they were embarking on a new monthly challenge, and it's called Being Upstanders in their community. So they're learning what it means to make a positive impact by serving others. So during their recent assembly, students learned about 4 local businesses and how volunteers serve their time to help others. Students then use their talents to decorate winter bookmarks for the Oregon Public Library. Beautiful new building if you haven't been there yet. Paper bags for the Oregon Area Food Pantry, and placemats for the Oregon Senior Center and Beehive. So they got to learn about how adults gave back to their community, and then they were able to do a little bit of that themselves. All right, now we get older kids, and their engineering is called Net and a Sled. So this is about, they engineered, through using a design process, they engineered sleds that were both fast and durable and can hold Ned the bear and all of the presents that he was delivering. I have a feeling this is right before winter break. They had to draw out sketches of their sleds, create a list of items they would need, use their collaboration skills to to construct the sleds, and then they had to test them while collecting data and calculating average speeds. They also voted on best logo design, most damaged sled, safest sled, and much more. And the fun didn't stop there because they also created commercials for their sled using their writing skills and had to summarize all of their results. So what a great opportunity for the students to do something fun and engaging with multidisciplinary learning wrapped up into all of it. And then we have our Spelling Bee qualifiers. Congratulations to all the staff and participants on a successful district spelling bee. The bee was held yesterday at the middle school, and the top 3 contestants will advance to CISA 2 regional spelling bee later this month. So the top contestants were Finley Jonas, Lana Patterson, and Daniel Schuetz. And the alternates were Uli Grib and Wyatt Oley. And thanks to Liz Galicia, Terry Schmolt, Jody Carlson, Julia Flynn, Missy Legler, and the OMS office staff for all their work to put together a really fun and a memorable event. So congratulations to all of those winners. And then we also had, this was really another cool event, and that was the OHS Fall Photo Challenge Gallery Night and Food Drive. So people could come, they could take a look at all of the photos that have been taken this fall, see who the winners were, even vote on their own favorite, and also contribute to the Oregon Area Food Pantry. So the gallery can be viewed after New Year during school hours by checking into the main office. And the show will be up until mid-January. Many thanks to Mr. Derek for organizing the whole thing. And the photos were really very spectacular. We also had a good number of our students who went to the Chicago International Model United Nations Conference last month. What an amazing experience. Congratulations to all of them. Thanks to Mr. Zier, our Model UN advisor, for making this opportunity possible. And I'm looking, I see some familiar faces there. Do you want to talk about that experience?
Sure. So we were actually quite excited. We're able to find the funds to be able to go to 2 conferences this year and have had record high enrollment numbers this year, with that actually only being about half of our group that's going to be going with us to this next conference. And so the ability to travel to these 2 conferences, especially that one, the international conference, means that we were meeting people from all over the world, as well as having opportunities to work with people and establish professional connections throughout the world, and especially as seniors. That's a very, very exciting idea.
So glad that you and all the other students had that opportunity. That's really terrific. And another opportunity. So it was in the news last night that we had an all-female crew of officiates at our girls basketball tournament last week, Thursday, Friday. And I really think that's a terrific thing because it shows our young women that this is out there as an opportunity for them, because you need to be able to see it to be it. And many people probably haven't thought about the fact that they could serve in that role too. And we are definitely in need of really great people who are willing to do this important work that allows the great opportunities for young people. And speaking of great opportunities for young people, we had the High School Alumni Day last week, and it was juniors and seniors who were able to listen to panels of alumni talk about what it's been like in their world, whatever their next steps happen to be, because there were lots of different possibilities post-high school graduation that were represented in the panels that were brought into school. So many thanks to Mr. Ashmore for organizing it, for all of our alumni who came back and were willing to share their journeys. Super, super interesting stories. And I really feel like our juniors and seniors who listen to the reflections find it much more meaningful than adults telling them what the next 2 years will be like. Instead, it's people that they know in many cases, talking about their experiences and what they meant, and giving some advice, what they wish they would have done if they could redo high school. And actually, that was one of the questions when we also did a podcast with some of the willing panelists afterward. What advice would they give to this year's 8th graders who are about to start their high school journey? What advice would they give to this year's seniors who are just this close away from whatever next adventure is there? And so, boy, was this a great conversation with some really interesting people. It's the type of experience when you listen to our graduates talk about what it was like to be here and what opportunities it has afforded them in the next steps that they're taking in their life, whether it's their ability to collaborate or it's their ability to use critical thinking and apply it to new situations. The things that they talked about were really something I think that make anybody associated with the school district very, very proud. So we had Ashton Ritter and Charlie Critch and Abigail Wanta and Brandon Thorne and Betsabe Ramos all come in and talk about what their journey has been like, and I found them to be very inspiring. A reminder, all buildings are closed tomorrow due to the impending snowstorm, and we'll be back up and running on Wednesday, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Those are always great insights into what's happening every day in our buildings. Okay, moving on to G, closing future agenda. Our next meeting is January 2nd, but the board and administrators will be January 22nd. Thank you for that look, Heather. I appreciate that. But we will be going to the Wisconsin Association of School Board Conventions in Milwaukee the 17th through the 19th. So we will be doing that this month as well as we do every year. All right, so we will move on to checkout. So I will go around the room, see if anyone has anything for checkout. Heather. Troy. Leslie. Caleb. Anna. The only thing I have is Dr. Bergstrom mentioned, if you have not been to the new Oregon Public Library, it is worth a visit. And congratulations to the Village of Oregon, the library staff, the library board, which Dr. Bergstrom sits on. What a treasure for our community. It is an astounding place of learning and light and right on the bike path. We are so lucky. And thank you to the donors in this community who came forth. It is a treasure, and I hope and I guess on the open house, they had more than 1,000 people come through in the 4-hour period. So we are lucky to live in this community of givers. So just wanted to mention that and say congratulations to our village partners. Okay, we will take about a 5-minute break, and then we will move into our work session. So about 7:20. Thank you, everyone.